So Simple tutorial. Good morning students. Welcome to SST So Simple tutorial. Dear students, in the previous class we had discussed Bretton Woods conference, the setting up of IMF and IBRD. These Bretton Woods twins started their operations in 1947. Things were going on smoothly as expected. Growth was seen in trade. World trade grew at more than 8% between 1950 and 1970. So was seen in the incomes of Western industrial nations and Japan. Income grew at about 5%. Today we will discuss the next topic, decolonization and independence. Let us see the meaning of decolonization first. Decolonization means the process in which a country that was previously a colony becomes politically independent. In other words, the process when a state, that means a colonial master, withdraws from its colony, leaving it independent. So decolonization is a process and independence is the outcome. Okay. Dear students, the Second World War had weakened the imperialist countries of Europe. Their military as well economies had shattered during the war. Many scholars hold the view that the cost of maintaining their control over colonies had become too high for the colonial powers. When the World War ended, large parts of the world were still under European colonial rule. But by the next 2 decades, most colonies in Asia and Africa emerged as free, independent nations. Free means politically free, not free from poverty or miseries. Their standard of living was low, they were economically very backward. Decolonization raised hopes in them. They also wanted to catch up with the advanced industrialized nations to bring economic development. But then what was the role of IMF and the World Bank here? Nothing. Recall students, the agenda of Bretton Woods conference was to preserve the economic stability and employment of the industrialized nations, to meet the financial needs of industrialized countries that fought the Second World War, isn't it? In fact, that conference was not held to solve the problems of these newly independent countries, also called the Third World countries. Hence, IMF and the World Bank were accordingly designed to meet the financial needs of these industrial nations. They were not equipped to handle the challenges of poverty and lack of development in the former colonies. I hope you have understood what I wanted to say. But Japan, dear students, recovered soon. Not simply recovered, emerged as a great world economic power. And so did Europe. They also rebuilt their economies fast. So naturally what happened? They became less dependent on the IMF and the World Bank now. Thus from the late 1950s onwards, the Bretton Woods institutions began to shift their attention towards developing countries. They began to help in the growth process of these countries. But these countries complained that they continued to be exploited economically by the European and American investors. Actually, what happened was that vital role came to be assigned to MNCs from America and Europe. The net result was paradoxical. How? See, the developing countries were trying to free themselves from the colonial influences of the past and counted as developed sovereign nations. And what we see here is that the IMF and World Bank imposed on these nations MNCs from the very same nations they were trying to free themselves. These MNCs actually kept exploiting the natural resources of the developing countries cheaply. They did nothing for the economic development of these developing countries. As a result, whereas the Western economies continued to grow, most developing countries did not experience any benefit in the 1950s and 60s. Understood? So what happened next? These countries organized themselves as a group, the Group of 77, also called G77, to collectively pursue their common interests. In pursuit of this, they raised a demand for a new international economic order NIEO. What is this NIEO? What did the developing countries mean by this new economic order? Look down last paragraph of the page. I am reading. You underline them. By the NIEO, they meant a system that would give them real control over their natural resources, that would provide them more development assistance, that would provide them fairer prices for raw materials, and that would provide them better access for their manufactured goods in developed countries' markets. Thus, the demand for setting up of NIEO was actually the expression of resentment and disappointment with the working of Bretton Woods twins. So, students, we can say that G77 was a reaction to the activities of Bretton Woods twins. These demands were students adopted by the United Nations General Assembly in 1974. Let me stop here. Time for probable questions now. 1. What was the attitude of Bretton Woods institutions towards the developing countries? 2. Explain what is referred to as the G77 countries. In what ways it can be seen as a reaction to the activities of the Bretton Woods Conference. 3. What did the developing countries expect from the NIEO? In the next class, we will discuss the next topic, end of Bretton Woods institutions and the beginning of globalization. Till then, keep reading and have a nice time. Thank you.